Let me set the scene for the day 3-minute concert clip changed my life forever. I'm in grade 8, and it's the last day of classes before we're all set free for winter break. My French teacher has about as much interest in irregular verb conjugation as the handful of students who bothered to show up. Instead, she's got YouTube on the projector screen, open to suggestions. Maybe 20 minutes into this highlights reel of middle school humor, someone pipes up that we totally have to check out this crazy video from Japan she saw the other day. My teacher fumbles a little with the spelling, but when she gets it right, a teal glow washes over the classroom. A crash cymbal counts in the beginning of a jaunty pop number, and we watch in bewilderment as an anime girl with an impossible voice appears on a stage, and thousands of fans go nuts. There's a few chuckles, a lot of questions. The tech's obviously cool, but who gets that excited about a cartoon character? I think someone might have brought up gorillas, but that's the beginning and end of what we all know about virtual musicians. We're still a few years out from those hologram dupes of Tupac and Michael Jackson. It'll be longer still before we see the likes of VTubers, deepfakes, anything AI. We're old enough to understand a little bit about the artifice that's always been a part of the pop industry, but we're looking at a brave new world, personified with cute pigtails. We move on to something funnier, something that won't make us think so hard about the future. I laugh with everyone else, but I also make a mental note to look up some more videos with his Hatsune Miku character on my own time. Fast forward to 2024, and Hatsune Miku is hardly the obscure novelty she once was to pretty much everyone outside of Japan. If you're already a fan, and there's a good chance you are if you've decided to check out a self-described podcast about singing robots, then a lot of what I'm about to say won't be new information. Even so, best to start from the beginning. Consider this Miku 101. The name Hatsune Miku refers to both a vocal sample library, known as a voice bank, and the character that serves as a mascot for that voice. Both were created by Krypton Future Media in 2007 as a product for Yamaha's Vocaloid 2 singing synthesis engine. The matter of Vocaloid 1 and the voices of Miku's predecessors is another story. The part of it that matters for now is that this first iteration of the software had a rather lukewarm reception at the time. It was first introduced in 2004 as a tool for professional songwriters, a digital instrument no different from a sampled piano. If a musician couldn't find a person to sing their demo track, here was a singer in a box. It was an exciting development for tech enthusiasts, but critical opinions on both the vocals themselves and the experience of using the program were mixed. Sales were accordingly unimpressive, even by the standards of a fairly niche market. If sampled singing voices were to be a viable long-term endeavor, Vocaloid 2 looked like the make-or-break turning point. Now, credit where it's due, Yamaha made big improvements for V2. Hatsune Miku might never have gone anywhere without the foundation of the new, higher-quality base software. However, the big shift in marketing came from Krypton, and CEO Ito Hiroyuki specifically. He had plenty of experience in creating and selling sound software, but he also understood Vocaloid's potential from the perspective of the consumer, having dabbled as an amateur musician in his college years. Ito wanted Vocaloid to be as accessible to hobbyists like him as for the professionals, and also believed that it had the potential to appeal to pretty much everyone who loved music. After all, Japan has a rich and energetic fandom culture. There's a proud tradition of people coming together because of their shared enthusiasm for a band, an anime, a video game, sometimes just one particular character. I mean, think about how beloved Hello Kitty is, even outside of Japan. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The marketing ultimately wouldn't matter if the voice was no good. For those unaware, the singing you hear in a song made with Vocaloid ultimately does trace back to a human performer. At its most basic, a voice bank is just a collection of recordings sung at controlled pitch and tone. The singer goes through a script that includes all the sounds, or phonemes, that make up the language they're working in, Japanese in this case. Then, people who know a lot more about computers than I do take this collection of sounds and process them into what amounts to musical building blocks. The user can arrange the sounds into whatever order they like to create words and melodies. There's other elements on top of that, of course, vibrato and pitch bending and all the other factors that breathe life into the vocals, but that's up to the user's taste. Krypton hired voice actress Fujita Saki to provide the vocal samples, but they weren't trying to replicate her voice so much as use it as a base for something new. There are plenty of clips on YouTube that compare Fujita's natural singing voice with various tunings of Hatsune Miku, and the contrast makes clear that Fujita gave a very stylized performance, high-pitched and deliberately cute sounding. The resulting voice was incredibly distinctive. Hatsune Miku was more emotional and human-sounding than the V1 banks could usually manage, but unique enough to still sound pleasant, or at least interesting, at her most obviously artificial or robotic. Meanwhile, an artist known as K was tasked with creating a character to match the voice. This was to be the real hook for the fandom audience. The face of the product had to be cute enough to catch people's eyes, and unique enough to keep their interest. K had some basic guidelines, like the character's age and that teal and gray color palette. But by every account that I've seen, the most iconic part of Miku's design, those ankle-length pigtails, can be credited squarely to his creativity. Finally, the project that was, at this point, known as Character Vocal 1 needed a proper name. Hatsune Miku riffs on the inherent sci-fi vibe of a virtual pop star. There's a little fudging by way of alternate character reading, but the name basically translates to First Sound of the Future. A little on the nose, but I don't think anyone will ever say it doesn't suit her. These basics established, Krypton refrained from building up the character any further. Hatsune Miku would be ascribed no set personality traits, no elaborate backstory. Though she was marketed as, quote, an android diva from the future where songs are lost, unquote, the matter of what that even meant was up to the audience to define. Their chance to do so came when Hatsune Miku went on sale on the 31st of August, 2007. Within a matter of months, she'd moved several thousand units in an industry where cracking 4-digit sales at all is a big success. The platform of choice for this first wave of Miku fans was Nico Nico Doga, or Nico Video, a Japanese video sharing site similar to YouTube. Before the year was out, songs featuring Miku were collectively getting millions of views. Now, the whys behind her explosive popularity were, and likely will always be, up for debate. We can credit a lot to good timing and just getting ahead of the trend. Miku may not have been the first Vocaloid ever, but she was the first to tap into that nerdy amateur market that proved so crucial to her long-term success. It's entirely possible that if we swapped some release dates around, and a later Vocaloid like Gumi were in Miku's place, fans would have latched onto this other character just as eagerly. What we know for sure, though, is that Miku was created to sing, and she wouldn't have gone anywhere without some decent music. The first few Miku songs to get any viral traction were mostly pretty gimmicky. To this day, Miku is still associated with leeks, as in the vegetable, thanks to the explosively popular cover of the Finnish folk song and classic meme Even Polka. Meanwhile, the first song to hit 1 million views on Nico Nico was a cute little nonsense song titled Miku Miku ni shite ageru, or I'll Miku Miku you. Its lyrics promise to make everyone a fan of Miku, and bids them all give her even more songs to sing. However, the first true pop hit to feature Hatsune Miku's voice was called Melt, and it opened the floodgates for just about everything that came after it. Released on the 7th of December, 2007 by an artist called Ryo, it's a disarmingly simple pop number on the surface. By Ryo's own account, he tried not to overcomplicate a song that was meant to embody a teenage girl with a crush. Embarrassing as he may have found a project based around cuteness and vulnerability, the tender emotions he lent to Miku resonated with her fledgling fanbase, and beyond. There was no attempt to make a joke, or draw attention to Miku's artificial nature. And more importantly, the song was just good. Ryo was and remains a fantastic composer, and though he was, at this point, exactly the sort of amateur that Ito Hiroyuki hoped would make use of Vocaloid, the production and mastering sounds impressively professional. With all due respect to memes and the clumsy first attempts of teenagers with laptops, Melt was 4 straight minutes of catchy, vibrant proof that Vocaloid could be used for unironically awesome music. Even more important than this one song's individual success, however, is how it brought others into the fold. Some of the biggest artists to contribute to the original Vocaloid boom have credited Melt specifically as the song that introduced them to Hatsune Miku, including the likes of KZ, Haleoshi, Oster Project, and even Hachi, an artist whose Vocaloid songs laid the groundwork for an internationally successful career later on as a singer and songwriter. And once these artists and others got on board, fantastic new Miku songs started coming out in ever greater numbers. There was Last Night Goodnight by KZ, Romeo and Cinderella by Doriko. The impact of Woaka's Rolling Girl is an episode unto itself, but by the time he came onto the scene, Miku had gained enough momentum to be something more than the sum of the artists who'd used her voice. Miku was the virtual idol, as famous for being an artificial singer as for any one thing she'd sung. That said, she wasn't alone anymore. Technically, she never had been. Hatsune Miku was actually the second voice bank released for Vocaloid 2, the first being the English singer Sweet Anne. However, about 24 voice banks were ultimately released for Vocaloid 2, and that wave can be credited much more to Miku than to poor, ignored Anne. Krypton, for example, released 2 more installments for their character vocal series. Package duet partners Kagamine Rin and Kagamine Len, and bilingual Japanese-English singer Megarine Luka. Meanwhile, other companies got in on the game with characters like Gakupo, Nakomura Iroha, Kai Yuki, and Gumi, the last of whom is one of the few Vocaloids to ever come within spitting distance of Miku's popularity. This ever-increasing variety of available voice types helped ensure the longevity of both Vocaloid as a musical tool and of Miku herself. It's hard to get bored when there's always something new on the scene. Now, this community was largely defined by the people actually making and enjoying music, but it wasn't entirely organic. Krypton Future Media was all too happy to capitalize on Miku's success, and in turn, they made 3 particularly noteworthy contributions to the infrastructure of the Vocaloid scene. First, there's the Piapro website, whose name derives from the Japanese pronunciation of the English term peer production. Krypton made it to serve as a forum for artists using any of their characters to share their work, from fan art and videos to instrumentals of one songs for covers and karaoke. Everything uploaded is, by default, authorized for largely unrestricted non-commercial use, which gave fans the chance to build off of one another's work without worrying too much about running afoul of copyright. Meanwhile, Krypton launched the indie record label Guarantee in 2009 to facilitate digital and international sales of Vocaloid music. Miku is the big star, but over the years, other companies have granted permission for a variety of voice banks to join the roster. The label only takes on artists who've established a decent online presence on their own, but it still serves as a major hub for fans of Vocaloid music everywhere, selling over 3,000 tracks by dozens and dozens of artists. And finally, there's the matter of the famous hologram concerts. Krypton's test run for live performance was a slot in Animello Summer Music 2009, a festival with a reliably large audience regardless of the singing robot in the room. I use the term hologram, which suggests an image projected into thin air, but to be technical about it, these concerts actually employ projection onto a special glass pane. It's basically a modern update on the old Pepper's Ghost illusion. Miku certainly looks a bit ghostly in clips from this performance, with the projector technology at the time unable to get her nearly as opaque as it would in later years. But it's hard to overstate just how momentous it was to see her at all. The digital age diva, built up from countless fans' imaginations, was right there on stage beside living, breathing bandmates. They played an hour-long setlist that concluded with, probably to no one's surprise, Ryo's Melt. More shows followed. The concert clip that started everything for me was a performance of Ryo's World Is Mine taken from Miku's first solo concert on March 9th, 2010. If you've ever seen the number 39 associated with Miku and wondered why, this date ties into that. I've mentioned before that Miku's name takes advantage of the fact that Chinese-derived Japanese characters, known as kanji, can generally be read with at least 2 pronunciations. The kanji for 3 and 9 can be read as sankyu, which is more or less how the average Japanese speaker will pronounce the English thank you, or it can be read as Miku. 39 is how people will naturally read the Arabic numerals 39, so I've seen both versions referenced all over the place. Miku's backing band in concerts, for example, is known as the Sankyus, and artists from Woaka to Deco27 have given the number a nod in lyrics and song titles. Cross-language puns notwithstanding, with Miku becoming such a star, the logical next step was to go abroad, to branch out from Japan to the Western market. There had actually already been plans in place to make Miku bilingual from her inception, and there was a serious effort to release an English voice bank as part of the Hatsune Miku Append expansion set released in April 2010, though that ultimately didn't pan out. The update to Vocaloid 3 in 2011 definitely made development easier on the coding side, but the biggest obstacle for the project was that, unlike the voice provider for Megurine Luca, the first bilingual success story, Fujita Saki simply didn't speak any English when they started. By her own account, the Japanese recordings had gone smoothly pretty much across the board. The English scripts, however, presented a serious challenge, needing retakes and extensive practice to differentiate the trickier phonemes, such as the English L and R sounds. Upon its final release in September 2013, Miku English was okay. To be fair, I'm of the opinion that English presents a fundamentally bigger challenge here than Japanese does. There's a bigger set of distinct phonemes to include, and you have to contend with consonants bumping up against each other in a way that just doesn't happen in Japanese words. That Miku English had some intractable pronunciation issues, and generally a weaker, less cute tone than her original voice bank was disappointing, but not all that surprising. Still, fans took what they had been waiting for, and the following year proved a big one for Miku's international profile in a few ways. First, Lady Gaga chose Hatsune Miku to be the opening act for her massive 2014 Art Rave tour. If you look up clips from the show, you can tell the audience isn't quite sure what to make of Miku. But Lady Gaga played nearly 40 shows across the US and Canada, which made for hundreds of thousands of people's first introduction to Vocaloid. Second, 2014 marked the launch of Miku Expo, a series of tours designed to take Miku worldwide. The first two were in New York and Los Angeles, followed later that year by her Southeast Asia debut in Jakarta. Unlike Lady Gaga's tour, Miku is very much the star of her own show here, and the target audience is made up of people who already know and love her. Since 2014, Miku Expo has taken her across Europe and North America, to China, Taiwan, and Malaysia, and later this year will debut in Australia and New Zealand. So, the climb upward has continued, at home and abroad. Miku has her own video games, the Project Diva series, and she's made cameos in other games ranging from Just Dance to Yakuza 5. She's appeared, or at least been referenced, in even more anime series. While promoting Miku Expo, she performed for a bewildered David Letterman on The Late Show, and later made an equally strange appearance on a shampoo commercial in 2016 with Scarlett Johansson of all people. She's featured on the sides of Super GT race cars through a collaboration with Good Smile Racing, and served as a cultural ambassador for her home city of Sapporo by way of Snow Miku, a mascot for the local winter festival. Her song count has steadily crept past 6 digits over the years, and some have even moved beyond pop songwriting to create Vocaloid operas. The most notable of these is titled The End, and it was promoted through a collaboration with Marc Jacobs and Louis Vuitton. All the while, Miku's vocal capabilities have continued to expand. Hatsune Miku V4X, and that's X for expression, debuted August 31st, 2016 for the Vocaloid 4 engine, with expanded features available for Krypton's own Piapro audio program. There was also a new, much-improved English voice bank available, and the following year, Krypton debuted Miku V4 Chinese, making her the first ever trilingual Vocaloid. With all of this forward momentum, you'd think Miku's 10th anniversary in 2017 would be nothing short of a triumph. And in many ways, that was still a decent descriptor. Fans poured their hearts into artistic tributes in every conceivable medium and style. Some of the best music Miku's ever sung came out in 2017, and her main summer concert, Magical Mirai, threw one hell of a birthday party. But a 10-year milestone is naturally going to come with some reflection amidst all the celebration. Some of the greatest bands of all time have risen to fame, burned out, and broken up within shorter time frames. Similarly, some of the key early figures in Miku's initial breakout had moved on to try different things. Even Rio was working with Human Singers by 2017. One perspective on these growing pains was best summed up by the song Unknown Mother Goose by Wowaka. Here was one artist who had moved on, in his case to serve as lead singer and frontman to a band called Hitorie, but he'd come back to partner with Miku one more time to give us an absolute masterpiece. The lyrics of Unknown Mother Goose are crammed with conflicting emotions and at times confusing metaphors, as Wowaka has always been known for, but it's ultimately a song about gratitude and growing up. It's a tribute to Miku as an avatar, conveying the emotions of musicians who, for whatever reason, couldn't or didn't want to share them on their own. Likewise, the composition of the song showcases just how much Wowaka had grown as a songwriter in the 6 years since his last Vocaloid song, while still displaying all the hallmarks of his old style that fans had fallen in love with in the first place, the songs that Miku had sung for him. On the other side of this coin, there was Sand Planet by Hachi. Like Wowaka, Hachi had largely moved on from Vocaloid, and had been performing under his real name, Yonezu Kenshi, for several years at this point. However, the organizers of Magical Mirai tapped him to write the theme song, and he delivered with a moody, introspective track that made the fandom absolutely lose their minds. The music video, featuring Miku and a spooky masked entourage wandering a desert wasteland, is still the fastest ever Vocaloid song to crack 1 million views on Nico Video. It's also the third most viewed Vocaloid song on YouTube ever, with 84 million hits on its official upload. It's still one of my personal all-time favorites, but it's hard to ignore the fact that, for a song written as a theme for a 10th anniversary celebration, the tone isn't very celebratory. Yonezu stated that he was seeking to balance a sense of nostalgia with new feelings, and compared his time with Vocaloid to building castles in a childhood sandbox. The song's lyrics and music video both pay tribute to some of the Vocaloid scene's greats, and it's all coming from a place of love, clearly. But there's also an odd sense of melancholy and loss woven throughout. I think part of that vibe is just the hazard of hiring the same guy who made songs like Matryoshka and Rakshasa and Carcasses to write your birthday tune. But in hindsight, it feels kind of like an unaware prelude to the anxious murmurs that would spread through the Vocaloid world in the following 5 or so years. The first sign of trouble came in July 2018, when Yamaha's big update to Vocaloid 5 was kind of a flop. The whole program was massively overhauled, and came as a package with 4 default voice banks for the first time. There were some interesting new features, but it also did away with some of the things people had liked best about V4, for no clear reason. Additionally, the bundled voice banks made for a steep and unpopular price hike on the basic product, without even getting into the fact that the voices themselves were rather unimpressive. What was more, after literally dozens of new or updated voice banks saw releases for Vocaloid 4, Vocaloid 5 only got a fraction of that number. Instead, other engines were beginning to take the stage for the first time. The Chevio Creative Suite, for example, had steadily been building up a substantial cast of both singing and speaking voice banks, which now notably included Ia, a character who had formerly been a Vocaloid. 2018 also saw the first demos for Synthesizer V, a new engine that would soon lead the charge on incorporating AI deep learning technology into singing synthesis. Miku herself was also technically no longer just a Vocaloid. In June 2020, Krypton released the initial prototype of their new Piapro Studio NT, or New Type, engine, for which Miku was, at this point, the only available voice. Even more so than V5, the move was not well received. More than just the frustration of having to learn the ins and outs of a new, seemingly superfluous editor, I remember almost every cover I saw from people giving NT a test run having a complaint of some sort in the description. Often about Miku's oddly nasal tone, or some particular quality of the older banks that they thought was lacking in this new one. I found one review in particular on IT Media of this beta release that summed up a lot of what I'd seen scattered across various YouTube comments and social media pages, i.e. that Miku NT felt like a step backwards. I'll caveat this by noting that the review is in Japanese, and I read it through a pretty janky translate extension, but the final line in the review as I read it is, quote, "Of course I am sad." Not great. All told, Miku ended up with 3 Japanese-only NT banks compared to the 7 she had for V4 across 3 languages. Though Krypton could and did fix the bugs that had popped up during the beta release, the sentiment still generally seemed to be one of dissatisfaction. Stepping back for a moment, for all that I've tried to keep this lighthearted, there was one more very serious matter that really shook up the community. On April 5th, 2019, Woaka, the artist who had changed Vocaloid forever with Rolling Girl and Unknown Mother Goose, died in his sleep of heart failure. He was only 31 years old. If you're listening to this as a longtime Miku fan, you'll remember the heartbreak that defined that April. If you're newer, you'll just have to trust me when I say that it hit us hard. Woaka's impact, more than any of the other tangents I've alluded to thus far, deserves a full episode unto itself. Suffice to say, it's in human nature to ascribe narrative to the random events that make up our collective existence. Woaka's passing had nothing to do with any of the other anxieties permeating the Vocaloid scene at the time, but it certainly felt like it fit into a pattern, the ending of an era we hadn't even defined the shape of yet. With all that I've said, however, I firmly believe that rumors of Miku's demise, and that of Vocaloid more broadly, were greatly exaggerated. Vocaloid was pretty unique for a long time, so of course it's going to feel a little weird seeing so many competitors finding success all of a sudden. Chevio and SynthV and Ace Studio and Magni AI. Like, the forward march of technology is now a full-blown parade. However, the term Vocaloid is still often applied to all of these. Nerds like me can get into the weeds about the specific engines and characters and what differences exist between them, but it's all just singing robots in the end. And the most famous singing robot of them all is still a Vocaloid named Miku. And the Hatsune Miku songbook is still expanding every day. Even if Miku never got another voice bank after the NT flop, which isn't the case, but I'll get back to that in a minute, there are still diehards out there using Vocaloid 1 because they're so fond of an early voice. People will stick to Miku until she becomes retro, and then they'll probably start using her because of that. And if there's one thing in particular that has erased any doubt for me about Miku's place at the apex of virtual stardom, that would be the mobile rhythm game Project Sekai, also known as Colorful Stage. First launched in Japan on September 30th, 2020, the game stars human voice actors singing alongside Miku and the rest of Krypton's lineup, in a combination that's proven a runaway success. There are tens of millions of players both at home in Japan and on various international servers, and there's even a movie slated for a January 2025 release in Japan. The game features both covers of existing Vocaloid songs and commissioned originals that tie in with the game's ongoing storylines. The former has helped boost the profile of dozens of different artists, both by revitalizing interest for nostalgic older fans and introducing new ones to Miku's extensive back catalog. Rhythm game audiences skew young, and I've personally met very enthusiastic Project Sekai fans who would have been toddlers or not even born yet when Melt first opened the Vocaloid floodgates. Meanwhile, the commissioned songs may be playing an even greater role in keeping Miku interesting. It's been nearly 4 years since Project Sekai's initial launch in Japan, and in that time, quite a few of Miku's biggest hits have been game commissions. Generally, these commissions get 2 releases, one featuring the game's singers, and the other released by the songwriter with Miku or some other Vocaloid of their choice. Project Sekai stories are impressively varied and well written for a game whose main draw is tapping dots to a beat. and the songs created for the game have been accordingly diverse. The biggest hits have mostly come from veteran Vocaloid stars who are perfectly capable of putting out a hit song on their own, such as Pinocchio P, Deco27, Neru, and Jin. But what's abundantly clear is that the folks making this game, who could very well have coasted on covers alone, have been putting in a lot of work to get the best music possible. And Project Sekai isn't the only collaboration that served to keep Miku on top of the world. In 2024, Hatsune Miku made her long-awaited debut at the iconic American music festival Coachella, after COVID-19 put the kibosh on her initial booking back in 2020. There was actually a fair amount of controversy over this performance, mostly centered around the use of a cheaper LED screen instead of the hologram system. But if you subscribe to the philosophy that there's no such thing as bad publicity, well, the performance did generate a lot of headlines. On the other, much more positive hand, we have Project Voltage, a series of specially commissioned illustrations and songs made in partnership with one of the few Japanese exports even more beloved than Miku herself, Pokémon. The songs were released between September 2023 and July 2024, centered around the 18 official Pokémon types, and all featuring Miku. I struggle to think of another property that occupies the same place in pop culture as Pokémon, but this whole endeavor has been enough fun that I'd love to see something like it happen again. Maybe Shonen Jump magazine this time. Get Miku teamed up with Naruto and the Straw Hat Pirates, I don't know. But the next big development is no doubt going to be Miku's next voice bank. On August 1st, 2024, tweets from the music software vendor SonicWire and from Yamaha's official Vocaloid Twitter feed revealed that a new iteration of Hatsune Miku for the Vocaloid 6 engine is in development. In addition to marking Krypton's return to Vocaloid after NT, this upcoming voice bank will also be the first of their products to incorporate AI technology. Now, unlike the web-scraping AIs that have given us Frank Sinatra singing modern pop hits and fake collabs between Drake and The Weeknd, two examples I really wish I were making up, the AI voice banks sold for Vocaloid and other engines are legally contracted commercial projects that provide fair compensation to the singer whose voice is being sampled. When Fujita Saki enters the recording booth to give Miku her latest upgrade, the process will doubtless have changed from her first outing in 2007, but the understanding that she'd be paid for her role will not. Furthermore, the purpose of AI here is not to have an algorithm do all the work of quote-unquote creating art. And if it were, I don't think the thousands of musicians in this community would have much interest. Vocal synthesizers have always been a tool for people looking to express themselves. They'll still have to write the melodies and lyrics on their own. And though AI voice banks have options that allow a user to get pretty nice vocals just by using the program's presets, artists tend to develop their own styles of tuning and editing synthetic vocals. The broadly appealing sound from the basic AI settings can't match those idiosyncrasies that lend Vocaloid songs their unique character. The musical building blocks metaphor might now better be compared to some fancy, intricate Lego kit full of specialized parts, but it still takes a lot of careful work to get to the final masterpiece. And while Hatsune Miku's crowdsourced identity bears some superficial similarities to something an image generator might have cooked up, all the contributions to who and what she is have been freely and happily offered. Miku is a symbol. She's a single figure who can embody the creative energy of countless different people all at the same time. She's the fakest of fake pop stars, and she's Pepper's ghost, a reflection of other people's hard work. She's an imaginary friend that everyone can share, helping us build castles in the sandbox. I can't wait to hear what she sings next. 39 big thank yous for listening, everyone. If you'd like to join me plumbing the depths of all things vocal synthesizer, subscribe and drop a review if you're feeling generous. That's by far the best way to help a new podcast get its footing. I'm still working on the full suite of social media, but Twitter and Tumblr are up and running. You can find them at Happy Synth Pod and Happy Synthesizers Pod, respectively. Happy Synthesizers is written, performed, and produced by Kay Judson. The theme music is Ia Van Polka, arranged with inspiration from Lloyd Duma and Automania.